All right, welcome everybody. Again, as Justin mentioned, we are graduated, so congratulations, everyone. I just make note that I tried to update the CWiki, the main OpenWhisk repo, and the website to remove any variant of the word incubator, and also did a couple of minor tweaks and updates related to that. It appeared that our wiki got renamed, so that affected some URLs, affected some of those things too. So just be aware if you have links to some of the wiki pages, they may have, paths may have changed. So I just scraped PRs and scraped dev list topics, but I think that maybe we should just go right to some, we can skip through some of these, but since some of the people are not on to speak to them. There are a couple of PRs that looked like they were ready to merge. They'd gotten some reviews. They looked green, and didn't know why we weren't merging them. We're just waiting for more reviewers. I mean, let's see. So we had 59 and 24. So I mean, once they've we've had some comments and some requests. Marcus looks like he's doing some reviews. Thanks, Marcus. Marcus, I'll let you know, reached out. He had to graduate. So at what point, Davies looks good to me. Is everyone just afraid to hit the merge button? I mean, do we need to improve our tracking process, or are we waiting for Roderick to merge, or what's the going on? Anybody comment? With that one and this one as well. Dave, do you have any comments, or I don't know if anybody's trying to talk, but I can't hear anybody.
I'm looking at it. I don't remember why this isn't merged yet.
I don't typically grab PRs in recent several months, but I guess what was going through my mind is there better labels or status that we can apply? Are we waiting for more test cases? Waiting for that one more person for some unspoken rule? Or anyways, I'll leave it go. But I guess my concern is that Roderick and others have done a great job at whittling down our PRs. We seem to have some good activity and some positive changes and fixes going in, and things have actually gone to merge conflict. There's some of them, like another one I'd listed. So I just want to make sure that the Git process is working, especially in terms of main OpenWhisk. Any thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, I think things are generally getting merged okay. There may be a few that just dropped onto the radar screen.
I just grabbed the ones that looked like they were ready to go, and then they've just been sitting there. So, anyways, but okay, cool. I'll take it. I'll take it that you and Roderick are on top of things and we'll keep things moving. That's part. I guess my main concern was also, mainly we have a flow of activity from I believe from Neighbor, and it looks like some of these they're really going through and having some positive impact. And want to make sure that we're responsive. In terms of dev list. I guess we can go right to the cleanup stuff. House cleaning, git repos. We have lots of repos named incubator. So is the list, this will start today, so do you want to keep using the list, and is there anything that we need to talk about here?
I think Chetan's listing by date is very useful. My guess is that it's probably the case that everything that hasn't been touched in 2 years could go, but we'll give people a couple days to figure out about that. And I think the other one is the deploy OpenShift repo. We can probably archive as well because we're supporting that with the deploy kube repo now. I've used deploy kube to go onto OpenShift 3.1, and that
awesome.
works.
Awesome.
Yeah, we just had to wait to get an OpenShift beta on the IBM cloud so I could actually work on it, and then a day later it was fine.
What version is the beta?
The beta is 3.1.
I guess there were some comments I recall like a month or two ago about the OpenShift deploy didn't work on version 4 OpenShift. So
right, I think version 4 is somewhat different. So as soon as we get OpenShift 4 out, we'll have to work on that. But the old OpenShift deploy repo didn't work on OpenShift 4 either.
okay. So the only thing I was wondering about is that with we've deleted several things, or you've deleted several things from the catalog, which is goodness. But the catalog is looking pretty thin, and we have these standalone packages. So I guess, what's our strategy? Is the catalog a viable thing? Are those just silly? Should we broke out the catalog initially because we thought people would start contributing packages, but that has not been the case. So do we want to make those part of main OpenWhisk again? Do we start looking at taking some of these standalone packages and bring them into the catalog or into, what's any thoughts on that? Anybody?
I think we should probably remove some of the packages and just get rid of them. That's my personal opinion, is that apart from maybe like a core set of the Whisk utils that you have, the rest of them, I don't think it ever really took off. And, from a maintenance point of view, I think they're just kind of rotting away. So my opinion would be that apart from like Whisk utils, like the rest of them pretty much should just disappear. But I'd be interested to hear what others think. I think that the problem with all of this stuff is that like it has to be maintained and updated, and a lot of them fall out of date with the services they're interacting with. And I think for the ones that kind of, like the Slack one, I always just think like, I'm not sure how much value they really bring from my personal experience, right? I think if you need to use something, you'll use a JavaScript library to interact with a service. And that's kind of what people do. So I know people sort of seem to like them a little bit, but I just kind of think they're kind of unmaintained and they fall out of date and stuff. So I think in terms of reducing the burden, my vote would be to really minimize anything that we ship package-wise.
Right, I agree. And so I know it caused Vince and others problems when we went to automate some of the testing, and it looks like we just use a couple hello world things from the catalog to do lots of tests with. So that might simplify some of the Travis and Jenkins and dependencies and things as well. We merge them in and start getting, looking partially and starting to clean things out.
I think the Echo, I think the utils is kind of useful. Just, I know Echo gets used in a lot of places for testing and just for check the systems up and running. So I think that's kind of okay. But, like looking down the list, like the Jira one and things like that, I just think, I wonder how much they're actually used or if they even work.
Right. Okay. Good commentary. Thanks. All right.
And also there are a couple of repos like workshop, tutorial, and playground. Maybe we can merge those
Okay.
kind of.
All right, that's a good idea. Are to what merge together or merge towards something
to one single something where it's kind of a more useful resource, and under that we can have this is workshop material, this is playground material, something like that.
Okay. So if you want to give that some thought and maybe post that on this Twitter or separate thread, that'd be great.
Okay, sure.
Good idea. So that reminded me that in terms of I had a question in terms of the website. In our community page, we have this events archive that we maintain, but we haven't really maintained it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looks a little stale.
So I don't know what value it has. I mean, I could delete this page and delete any reference to it. I know, James, that you had been keeping it up for some time, but any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think just I think get rid of it. I don't know what value that kind of has, and again, from a maintenance point of view, I just think it's probably best to remove that stuff.
And added an umbrella as well. So, all right. So in terms of Incubator Dash, just in terms of what our past experience was with Apache, that Git should, at least for a long period, it seems for a long period of time, will maintain redirects for aliases for if we rename Incubator Dash. Are there any concerns about the rename, and are Dave, are you initiating that through a Jira ticket, or do we have to do it per repo, or one ticket for all, or?
I was going to initiate it through a Jira ticket at some point. I was contemplating trying to figure out if there are some that we're going to archive, just doing that first. There's no point in renaming something that we're going to throw away the next week.
Okay.
And so once we get an initial set of things we want to archive agreed on, I'll probably just put in a Jira ticket to rename the rest of them.
Okay.
As you said, with the redirects, it really shouldn't matter that much. I think probably the only thing that might need a little care is that a lot of these repos have Travis encoded credentials in them, and I think that may be driven by the repo name. So we may have to re-encode those credentials. We'll figure it out. I mean, the thing that'll break there is the push to Docker Hub and the Travis to Slack integrations.
Right.
So I may try to do one, like put in a Jira request for just a few repos and see what happens to them, and then do the rest of them.
Like main OpenWhisk, do that first, or?
Yeah, no, I was going to do something more tangential, like a couple of the runtime ones, or something that we don't touch that often. So if it breaks, we don't care quite as much as main OpenWhisk.
Okay. So just thinking ahead, I mean, in terms of consolidation, again, we can look. Is there a possibility of like kind of merging all the packages together into one repo eventually as well, and then also the runtimes? Because I was hopeful that if we all consolidated against a single proxy, the Go proxy, that maybe some of these just become basically Docker file add-ons to that proxy. Is there been any thought around that? I know Mikhail is not here, but I know I talked to him a couple months ago about that. Is there any? It goes down to releases. I mean, I'd like to get to a point where we have a small number of repos that we can easily release at major and minor point levels together. That's what I'd like to get to.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some value in having this separate repos for the runtimes, because it does make the testing much simpler.
Okay.
Right. I mean, you make a change to the node runtime, and you only have to test the node runtime. You don't have to test the other 10 language integrations as well.
Right.
And now that we don't have the incubator votes to deal with as well, I think the automation we have around releasing is decent. So that if we want to release 7 or 8 runtimes all at once, the scripting just does that. We get a single voting email. We even generate the email you use to do the vote. So it's not so bad.
Okay.
There's still some more streamlining that can be done, but it's down to, honestly, it takes me about 15 minutes of actual human time to do a release.
Okay. Good feedback. Right. What about the clients? Are we going to be looking to consolidate against a single client? Or, I mean, like we have client Swift, that had gotten updates, but if you look in the updates, I bet it's just like a version bump, probably.
Yeah. I would defer to James on this. My sense is that probably the only client that people are using is the JavaScript one.
Right.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true. I don't think anyone uses that Swift one. It was never kind of feature complete. I think it was just a very basic client. So yeah, I think I mean the Python one as well. I think we talked about this before. I think the Go one obviously is used because it's in the CLI and stuff. But the JavaScript one is obviously very heavily used. But the other two, I would argue, probably get rid of. I don't think they're maintained. Yeah, I mean, we have this kind of perennial discussion about generating more clients automatically from the Swagger. I think if we ever got around to doing that, that would be the way forward anyway. I think, yeah, the burden of maintaining individual clients is huge. So I don't know I doubt anyone uses any of the others.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern would be for Python. It seems to me that from an IBM perspective, a lot of the interesting use cases are around AI analytics and the Python communities, and we've recently added the Python AI subdirectory, sub build for that type of runtime and additional libraries. Do we know anybody in the Python community? I mean, I'm afraid of. I don't know if they use this if they would use this client if we maintained it better, or if we advertised it better.
I think if we had I'm sure if people, if there was a Python client, people would use it, definitely.
It's on the non-maintained list.
But yeah, it's it hasn't been updated in 2 years, so you wonder how much, if anyone uses that particular instance today. But yeah, so it comes down to, but if we're not going to maintain it, I just think, given how challenging we find it to, I think my personal preference would be quite ruthless with pruning the repos, because we find it difficult to maintain stuff, and we can always add things back in the future, but my personal preference is to be fairly ruthless with stuff.
I agree. When it comes to resource and maintenance, absolutely. So I think people will come out of the woodwork if they miss it, hopefully. And it's still effectively there, right? It's just it'll be archived. It'll be archived, or will they? How will we archive any of these for a period of time? What's our process? Are we going to mark them deprecated, delete them outright?
So just to add some from my prior experience with Sling and Jackrabbit. So there we also had lots of modules in Sling, and what the practice was to create a tick repo, and anything which does not have an active maintainer and something which we can't support, we move that to attic folder. So that was easy in the SVN world at that time. Later we moved to Git. I have not seen the practice what we do with the Git, but but if there's a choice, we can leave them as is and nobody is going to bother us. Probably then we can focus on only those repos which have been modified in 2019 as a starting rule. Get them migrated and monitor them, and the rest we can leave them as is unless somebody comes up and say, okay, they want something to be useful there. if the infra says we have to get rid of them or have to do something, probably then we can create a OpenWhisk Attic repo and create folders and import these repositories under those folders maybe, and just leave them there. If somebody wants, they can install.
Good suggestion. Thanks, Sheldon.
So I've just had a look at the client Python repo, and it's actually, ironically, all it is a README file which says there is no Python client.
Okay, out it goes.
and then it just gives you like, here's how you do it with Python requests. So I think we could safely remove that one.
That's funny. Very funny. Thanks, James. All right. Any other thing around cleanup, concerns, considerations? Okay. What about the release repo? When I was working on some information, you know, we have should the release repo, some of those documentation, some of the tooling, should that be moved someplace else? Should we release the release repo, or leave it as is? I guess I leave it. I just wanted to. I guess what I was concerned about is we have all these repos and we don't really have a roadmap or a guide to say, here's our repos and here's things that are experimental and here's things that are released. Mm-hmm. And we really don't have a pointer from any of the repos saying, go look at the release repo. Only those of us in the project who do releases, and maybe even that's a stretch, know about the release repo. How do we better, you know, cross-reference information? How do we better? I guess my initial reaction was maybe we need to move some things to the website, at least the list of repos that we support and release. You know, we have the download page, but maybe expand the download page to include some information from the release repo in terms of listing the repos and their status as experimental, or other repos as status experimental, etc.
Right. Yeah, I think once we archive some stuff, it probably does make sense to add somewhere to the website. Here's a list of all the repos grouped by category or something to help people navigate through that. And there are a few of them, like the release repo is really an internally focused repo at some level, right? It's tools we use to make releases.
Yep.
And so it's fine to have repos like that, but people just don't understand what they are, or we can document what they are, and then that'll make it easier.
There's a modules page in the OpenWhisk core repo which lists all these repos and has a rough categorization of what they are.
Yeah, I touched that yesterday in my document, but I have not that page has not been maintained.
Yeah, it's like auto-generated from the.
I considered deleting
GitHub.
Okay, cool. It is, because there was manual stuff in there as well. I'll look at it again today.
Right. Yeah, something like that is probably what we want, whether it's in the Git repo or it's on the web page or something. This is useful.
Yeah. So, all right, enough of that, beating a dead horse. So about your standalone runnable jar file, is any update on the status of that? Are we going to mainstream it as a repo? I think you were working on that, Chetan. Is that a repo now?
Yeah. So no. So it would remain in the core only, and now here's a confusion. I saw that mailing list on the sanity of having nightly releases, and I'm a bit lost on what's guideline final there. My idea was to have that standalone jar downloadable under the release page in the core GitHub repo, just like we have for WSK CLI in the WSK repo. So just have it under the release and maybe name it nightly or snapshot, yeah. So just modify the Travis build to produce this thing and attach it as release, like we do for WSK.
That'd be awesome.
That would be first level, and once we have a proper release of the core repo, we would have a proper release version which we can actually refer to people, because so that they get a stable version to work with.
Right.
So that was a plan. but I was not sure with all this this talk about using Travis for publishing releases. And so other thing was, there's another option is we support Maven uploads of snapshots, and I make it available on the Maven repo, which would require us first to upgrade Gradle, because I want to get that done, because that has better support for the newer version, has better support for Maven publishing. So that was the other track I was trying to follow. So I think I can get up a PR for the WSK kind of approach, and we can get going with that, so that we have something under the release, and we can update our documentation to let it refer and download. But the problem is that that thing would only refer to nightly releases of all the runtimes. So sooner we should plan for a release for the core repo, and at that point we can treat it as a first class output of that release process, and that we can then advertise to various users. Download this thing, this is released, it refers only to the release artifacts, and they should not have any surprises as with day-to-day development we do.
I think that makes sense, and I think honestly there's really no reason for us not to push ahead with the release of the core repo. I mean, there are probably things that people want to get fixed, there's random things like that, but it seems to me it's achievable this month.
I'd love to be able to promote your work come this end of summer, early fall, and make sure that becomes a mainstream part of our documentation.
Right. That may also simplify some of our...
Seen people using it, and they have been found like it has a much reduced surface area to break down, so it is stable to use. The only missing part is gateway support, which I was thinking we can add easily. It acting as a small orchestrator of containers, so it can spin up automatically the gateway and Redis, and so that would complete the whole feature set that OpenWhisk support as an end user facing. So that way, I think standalone is a good entry point for people to experiment. No surprises, just they need Docker and Java, which is good enough.
I want to promote it at EclipseCon in October, just let you know. I want to be able to demonstrate it and maybe putting a workshop around it.
So let me do on that. I would get that PR done to at least create a snapshot release for the GitHub. Just on Pirate WSK, that should be done by tomorrow or this week. And next week or this month, we target a core repo release and ensure that this gets included as an artifact in that release process.
Cool.
It'd also be interesting. I'd definitely love to, if we can get API gateway support, I'd love to use this in some of the CI/CD pipelines just to speed things up, to get tests running much quicker. Because yes, this is much faster than, sometimes the pipeline takes like 25 minutes on some repos, and that is a pain.
I've just started digging today into the API gateway, trying to understand. I've put some questions on the channel also. Once I have an understanding, I think it's just implementing a plumbing code to launch 2 or 3 containers and stitch them together. Hopefully this week I should have some first prototype of the PR of that.
You made my day, Chetan. Thank you. All right. I had a couple other topics. We had the stuff Sven had disclosed about this, the Docker overloads and the rescheduled race condition stuff. Is that discussion stalled, or is anybody driving that discussion still?
I mean, I think there's a broader thing we could do a better job of. As I know, between so IBM obviously is operating OpenWhisk, Adobe is, Dominic is. We should probably collectively work on like an operator's guide or documentation of some of the ways we actually deploy OpenWhisk that aren't covered. Like, I mean, we do, IBM does blue-green deployments as part of our high availability. So we have multiple OpenWhisk installations talking to the same database. We do database rotation. There's a bunch of stuff that isn't particularly confidential, but isn't written down anywhere. And so I think that'd be great to get from the various providers. Just because right now, if you try to deploy OpenWhisk in production, you're there's a lot of things that are known that that you have to discover yourself.
Okay. Good commentary.
Yeah, I think there we probably for now channelize energy on the cube repo, which is, I think, has a much simplified operator experience for people to try out either an IBM cloud or any of the other clouds where they get managed Kubernetes service. So probably right now, the cube repo is the default values is geared towards like a minimal deployment. What we can add is a production values YAML, which says, okay, you have like minimum 3 replica of Kafka, 3 for the Zookeeper, and those things. And also some guidance on the Docker network or some of the security part of how people isolate. Some guidance. I think it would vary based on operators. Like if somebody is running a trusted workload mostly, then they would not be bothering much with that. But if you're running something somewhat heterogeneous workload, then you might be interested in how to secure it to a minimal level. So I think Cube Repo for now focusing on that and getting to a state where people can just do a hem deploy with a, let's say, production values.yaml, and which is fairly something we would say is supportable as a production use case. I think that would be a good starting point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's a good idea.
Cool. All right. In terms of the scheduler, is that discussion still ongoing? I know that a PR, that one of the PRs that dropped with scheduler this lead, and with the discussion going. What's our approach for adopting a scheduler, or adopting a plurality of schedulers that people can choose from, or from a plurality?
Right. I mean, I haven't been following it incredibly closely, but it looks to me like the conversation is moving along, and Dom's working on feature flags and things like that, so that we have the capability of having multiple schedulers in the code base. I think there's probably some work that has to be done around testing, figuring out how to turn these feature flags on and off, and some kind of Jenkins run, just so things don't rot. But I think he's got that in hand too.
Cool. Sure about this definition. But yeah, I was just concerned with the conversation that stalled over 2 weeks ago.
I thought there was some other pull request. There's something that Spen was commenting on much more recently than that.
Okay. All right. I saw another one, but there was a work in progress, but this seemed to be a standalone one. So I guess I'm, I understand all the things you said, Dave. I guess my concern is that if people are coming to us, especially post graduation, that we're receptive to, or responsive, I should say, to pull requests. And I know Dom's around, and Dom's on the PMC and all. But I don't know. Basically, if our only mechanism is Git for discussing these things in the dev list, and these things stall. How do we sort of how we breathe life into them again and keep them going? It's ongoing,
right.
I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I have a warped version of time since I was on vacation last week, so I read 1,000 emails on Monday. And there was definitely discussion in those emails on Monday that I read. Now that discussion may have been a week old, but
okay, cool. Thanks. Not that there's a lot of activity, but for what there is, keep it going. All right, that's all I had. Any other topics, Pretty? Did you want to discuss what you're doing? I know you had some intents today, but perhaps you didn't get to the point you wanted to share?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to share what I'm working on recently on Tecton and Knative and OpenWhisk runtime. So, so I have been, so there were a few weeks back, so a few folks from IBM, they came up with Tecton pipeline on how to build the OpenWhisk Node.js runtime and deploy it on Knative. So instead of using Knative build, so Knative build is getting deprecated. It's already deprecated, and instead Tecton pipeline, Tecton CD is the kind of new replaced version of it. So there were Tecton CD is a generic kind of pipeline for any CI/CD process, but Martin and Sugandha from IBM, they kind of created YAML resources for OpenWhisk application and deployed it using Node.js runtime, the changes we made for Knative. So let me share my screen. Okay, so they both wrote this blog, earlier this month, and it has kind of I would recommend to go through the blog for details about how the Tecton, what all resources, and how the build is getting implemented, and the Docker image is getting created. So I'm working on one kind of extension to it, is basically pull the application source from GitHub and then build an image and serve on Knative. This is pretty much based on kind of a similar concept of what I did a few weeks back, but that was using Knative build. Now this is using Tecton. So there are certain changes that I had to do to make it working using Tecton. So for the folks who are not familiar, it's just for the Tecton. The way it works is Tecton comes with the pipeline resources, and there are like different kinds of resources. So basically it will pull the GitHub repo, whatever repo that we specified, whatever revision we specify. There are a lot of different functionalities that comes with it. You can pull from the pull request, public or private repo, and all sorts of different configuration. There is also a pipeline resource called image. So basically whatever the image is getting built, it gets pushed to either Docker or any other registry. You specify where and credentials, and it will push to that particular registry. So we are using same for the Git pipeline and the image pipeline, and we are providing our Docker registry and then the service account. This is the same concept as we did with the Knative build, that you need your credentials and then the service account, which is associated with those credentials. And so the image pipeline will basically use that to push the image. Now the new concept here is task and task run. So the Knative build, we used build template to specify what is the build parameters, what all are the parameters for the Node.js runtime, what are required parameters. and set the Docker image configuration so that we can build the runtime. Here, there is something called task resource, where pretty much same concept, same idea, to define the parameters and specify the steps, what all steps are needed. And task run is actually to run that particular task. Now there is more to it, as in there are pipelines, so you can run multiple tasks through pipeline. You can basically say run task 1 after task 2 kind of thing. And also let me actually go through. So this is the YAML schemas. It's the detailed YAML schemas for all the resources that I just specified. It's pretty much similar to what Knative build had. So there's nothing major change. It's just that the API changes. And this is how you specify the Git pipeline resource. I don't know, I'm not able to select. And this is how you specify the image. So basically, you just specify the Docker particular name of the Docker image and where on Docker.io or whatever registry that you have. And this is the task. So this is where all the meat is, where basically all the parameters and all the post-processing. And this is the way task run. Oops. This is the way you specify the parameters in task run. And basically task run, here we specify where is my GitHub. So the YAML itself, constructing the YAML schema itself is little different, little complicated. Like for example, you have to specify resource reference and then name, and then if you add pipeline, then there are even more challenges. But the concept is pretty much similar to, okay, you have inputs and then you have resource, which is your runtime Git, and then output is your runtime image. And you kind of basically inject your code here. So I kind of took this as a sample, as an example, and changed it so that the same sample that we ran packages left pad, where kind of the Node.js runtime installs the dependencies and creates the action. So I just added the application GitHub repo and specified in addition to runtime that this is my application, and added one more step so that basically the application, the app gets cloned into the target path and then make it available to the Node.js runtime. So Node.js runtime gets cloned into a particular directory, and then application gets cloned into certain directory, and then basically concatenate that kind of, make it available to runtime Docker image. And yeah, so this is how you specify in the task run. And just by doing these simple changes, I could, so this is the overall, if you just run this particular sample, just by doing these changes, I could basically get the application pulled from the GitHub, and then it build it, and all the dependencies are installed, and it creates an action. So basically makes the image available so that that particular image can be used to create a service on Knative. So it's pretty simple, and all the functionalities kind of come with the Tecton, just like Knative build, but it's a little bit more advanced. So yeah, this was kind of, yeah, I mean, this is what I was working on recently.
Yeah, this is awesome, Pretty. So beyond publishing this as a blog tutorial, how do we make this more of a supported set of documentations or examples that have presence in any of the three communities, OpenWhisk, Knative, or Tekton? What things can we create to encourage cross-project awareness?
Right. So there has been so many blogs now. I think it's the time where we kind of make it as part of any of the repos. The runtime changes are already there on Node.js. We need to work on more runtimes. And also maybe we can have this on the website, on OpenWhisk website, or kind of make it as part of the repo. I don't know what.
Is there any opportunity for us to like have a sample? I know that Knative had a place months ago. I don't know if they do anymore, but does it still, or does Tekton have a place where we can start having a footprint where we give them our service YAMLs and things like that? So
yeah,
our build YAMLs or whatever equivalent is for Tekton. Sorry.
Yeah, I can look into it. So I know with Knative build, there was like kind of a build template samples where people used to submit their own samples and community would kind of accept it. But I don't know about Tekton. Let me check and see if we can.
Yeah, it's my. I mean, I think in terms of priorities, I want people working in these other communities to know we're doing this work, even if it's just a sample or demo or something that points back to maybe where we have some more fuller documentation within our project.
Yeah, no, that would be great. And yeah, so people can basically, even through the Knative community, people can get into OpenWhisk and say, yeah, this is how it works. So yeah, let me check how we can add this into Tekton.
Thanks, Pretty.
Yeah. Sure.
Preeti, how is the code is supposed to provide it, the action code? Like right now, I saw it inline in the YAML, but in real world, how would it be able to pull from Couch or any other storage?
Yeah, so based on I don't know about specifically for Couch, but I think yeah. So basically, how the Tekton features has, it can pull from GitHub, and
Yeah.
I think I'm sure.
But in Tekton, it looks like it's resource specific, so you'd have to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it was our goal with Knative build to be able to, like we try to do for Whisk deploy, was to try and be source, and imply the source and what protocols and what things you would need in terms of credentials and stuff like that. But it looks like for Tekton, you have to explicitly have different resource task builders, whatever they're called there.
Yes.
Basically we've been chasing the number one. GitHub is the convenient use case, but the number one use case by far for building serverless is flowing from object storage. Lambda S3, their primary way their customers build is putting their Lambda functions in S3 buckets. So we'd love to be able to pull from other storage sources.
Yeah, so with Node.js runtime, we have added changes where basically it just it gets pulled from, for example, it just runs wget, and if you have the URL, then you can specify this URL, and I don't know if this would work with the object storage URL. It should, but I'm not sure 100%.
Okay, the reason I brought that up is I'm not able to visualize the developer flow from the OpenWhisk side into the Knative world. So Knative, I don't know much. So if something is wrong in my assumption, let me know. But I believe if the idea is that users would still deploy normal OpenWhisk functions, but in the background, OpenWhisk with Knative integration would deploy them as proper Knative services, which are set to 0 in the initial launch, but as with the load increase, they would increase, and somehow the invoker would be routing to them, or later controller itself routing the calls to the Knative service.
So I've been discussing this, projecting to the future, is that it'd be ideally, this is what I was kind of asking about the scheduler. It'd be ideal to actually have potentially the ability for OpenWhisk to deploy to not only our own invokers, but also to Kubernetes pods by Knative. So, and have that be configured.
So, I did have so far done 2 prototypes, one for AWS Lambda and others we are doing with Azure. The idea being that invoker, instead of executing the action locally, delegates to the Lambda or the Azure to actually do the computation. So for the Lambda, what we did was we had something like a separate microservice, which is in the PR, which listens to the changes in the Whisk's collection, and upon any change detected, it would programmatically fetch the code, and in case of Lambda, use the Lambda API to create the Lambda layer and publish it, and and then what the invoker would do is so as a developer flow, developer would be just updating the code and try to run it. So the invoker would see if it has the corresponding code available in Lambda, it would route the call there. Otherwise, it would execute it normally. So to the end developer, it does not matter where the code ran. But eventually, after some time, because this build and deployment takes time, it's not that as fast as what we have in a raw OpenWhisk code deploy. So so till that time the build catches up, it executes it locally. But the moment it catches up, there's a cache invalidation happening, and then it can start routing the calls to the Lambda. So I was thinking with Knative also, if we have a similar construct where we have something like you listen to the change feed and couch, and if any change happen in the Whisk collection, and then you trigger the Tecton pipeline, get the Knative build done, and get the
this is exactly why Pretty's doing this work, so we can start regardless of the source, we can start creating that work, have something, that workflow there for us to do early experimentation with.
Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, it's something. Let's see how we can get the Knative part hidden behind the WSK. At least as a start, that's one way to get into the Knative world. Other would be like, directly you get to Knative and start routing between the actions. But it would be a good exercise to get a flow where a user just as a WSK create and eventually it converts into a Knative service.
What I like to tease out is what you said is your concept was having the invokers delegate. My question is, what value do the invokers have? Anyway.
Yeah, so that's only the first one where you don't have to change much in the design right now. So you can just add a new container factory, which is like a Knative container factory, which internally just routes to the Kubernetes DNS API and
understood.
Gets things done for you.
Got it.
And later once we get more confidence, you can pull that logic into the controller itself, where controller instead of routing into a Kafka and invoker, it can just look up the service and route the code there after doing the authentication.
Right. Thanks, Chetan. Good commentary. Thank you. Yeah. Good ideas. All right, we've got a lot of cleanup to do. Keep things and consolidate so we can get to a point where everything's manageable, where we can start doing some of this really cool experimentation. That's where I'm at. So thanks everybody for attending. And for 2 weeks, do we have a volunteer to host? The pool is small.
Yeah, let me just look. So it's on the 14th? No.
No, earlier than that.
The 7th. Yeah. I may be on vacation that day. I'm not sure. I'm on vacation on the 8th and 9th for sure. The 7th, I'm not sure about.
Be kind enough to host the 7th of August? I'm calling you out, but would you mind hosting?
7th of August. Let me. So I would be traveling around 11th. 7th would be fine. I can host for the 7th.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, Chetan will tentatively host on the 7th. So start thinking about topics. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.